This is Dawn Evans from Sourcing Interest Group, and welcome to the Inside Source Executive Video Series. With me today is an old friend of mine, Jack Miles, and Jack is the Secretary of the Florida Department of Management Services. So welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dawn.
So you've had an interesting career. You've been in private, you've been in public, and pretty different markets. So tell me, how's the career switch and why did you do it?
Well, it's interesting. I failed at retirement twice, and the second time I was basically leaving Cigna, and my wife and I were in a diner in Winter Park. I was reading a newspaper, and I saw an article about Governor-elect Scott, and the press was all over him for not adding agency heads fast enough. And a firm in New York called Gerson Group had been retained by the governor to help him ramp up and find the right people. And I had met Russ Gerson years ago, went home, sent him an email, gave him my career summary, and 30 days later I got appointed to the role.
Oh my goodness. So what is it like working in government now?
It's, you know, I've always said focus on what's the same versus what's different. And there's a tremendous amount in government that's really the same as business. So people look at a board of directors in the business side. We have a legislature in the public side. So there's a lot of commonality between the groups. What we do is not as much set in policy by us. It's really set in law by the legislature. So there's a lot of subtle differences, but there's a lot of things that are the same. The big thing is our experience that I find, especially people understanding the business side of things versus what goes on in government. Folks are very focused on comparing government to government versus government to the business sector.
All right, so you're involved in much more than procurement in this position, though, and typically you've been more in the CPO role. So what is your typical day like? What else are you handling? What else is on your plate? Well,
DMS is a very, very diverse agency. Our operating budget is about $2.5 billion. Our functional budget on what we have accountability for is about $9.5 billion. So it consists of procurement, real estate and facilities, division of telecommunications, human resources, and all of our systems around HR. As well as retirement services and state group insurance. All the health care benefits for the state employees is also handled by DMS.
So state of Florida, we have, all the states run a little bit differently, but what do you see as one of the challenges facing state governments today?
Well, first in Florida is really jobs, which is the governor's agenda to get people back to work and get a more business-friendly environment for businesses, so people are hiring, and the hiring is always good, and it's a good thing for us. The other big challenge that we have is taking a look at how we manage our expenses. Florida's in a great position. We just did a manpower report in January, and basically when you take a look at where Florida stacks up against other states in the nation, we have the lowest cost per capita for state infrastructure. Wow. So there's not a lot to really cut out of what we have, but the reality is how do we get more public-private partnerships and firms to come in and help us with some of the things that we're doing.
Okay, so when we're talking about the role of procurement, is it different in private versus public industry, or is procurement, or do you have, obviously you have more transparency required.
Yes.
But what else is different about it?
It's kind of the way the process works. One of the things that was shocking to me when I came into the role was that, you know, having been in procurement for the number of years I have, and having the knowledge and experience and willingness to coach and counsel folks as they go through procurement, which I actually think gets us much better outcomes, the ability to do that in many of the environments that we do procurement in doesn't exist. So I'm basically an outsider in a lot of the procurements, and what happens at the very end, I get the outcome of that procurement and basically get to accept or reject it. And it's a challenge because you might want to work to modify and coach and counsel during the process. We have found ways to do procurement, so we have more flexibility around that, and that's to work through some of the consortiums that exist through states getting together and doing consortium spend, and we recently did that on a PC transaction.
Oh, neat. So now, I know your history, and in fact, I used to quote you years ago. I mean, you've been known for making some significant changes in companies and really turning them around.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your career.
Well, it's funny. I, like many other people, kind of fell into what I wound up doing. You know, back at Prentice Hall, I did methods and standards work and was asked by the fellow that ran procurement if I had an interest in doing some work in there, and that's how it got started. What I also realized, though, at that point in time is procurement gave me the ability to touch every part of an organization.
Exactly.
There was no part that was offsides, and the other thing was how to get embraced by businesses. I did a major project with a president of our professional book division at Prentice Hall, Bob Martin. Still a good friend. I haven't talked to him for a while, but was one of my mentors. And you know, I took a flyer with Bob. I was in there with the VP of Procurement, and he had a project that he was launching, and he thought he had the best way to do it. He threw it out to my manager and me, and I said I thought there was a better way, and he said, well, what is it? And I said, I don't know. I need about a week and a half to figure it out, and we did. And I still have the note at home that, like, this was back in the late 70s, where we saved them $500,000 and got them to market a lot faster because of having that approach with things. So, Prentice Hall, I moved on to Ames Department Store, had a stint in retail, then went on to Travelers, and never thought I'd wind up working for an insurance company, but I did. It was a great opportunity. And then the international experience at CIBC up in Toronto, which was a really, I think, a career-launching move for me. It was just dramatically different.
Yes.
And others have said this. I've never been able to confirm it, but apparently I was the first chief procurement officer ever in Canada. So that was pretty cool. And then coming back to the States and doing some of the things that I've done, since then with AIG, Computer Associates, and then this wonderful role with the state.
I love that. It's such a wonderful career that you've had. Retired twice. What's on the horizon now? You're too young to retire. Let's just say that first.
I've had a couple of people tell me that.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to. I think it's the level of engagement that I'm looking to do. And not to sound pompous, but it's the experience and the wisdom, which I think wisdom combined with courage to do things is one of the issues that's lacking in many corporations today. And to help the industry, if you will, of procurement, corporate services, and things like that, to get to another level and perhaps work as a bit of an advocate with others and advisors to sort of bridge that gap within organizations is something that I really have an interest in doing. But it's just a matter of finding the next hurrah.
Well, now that I'm living in Florida, I'm glad you're in charge of all the expenses there. Keep our state in good shape.
Absolutely,
I appreciate that.
Yes.
So you've dealt with government bureaucracy on one side, and not that it's a good or bad thing. You've dealt with shareholders on the other side, not that it's a good or bad thing. Which of the two are more challenging?
Again, they both have their challenges. I had a senator early on in my tenure after I had testified before one of the Senate committees, and he said, government, it's just like business. The difference is you have a board of directors of 160 people in Florida, and we all know your job better than you. And, it's the same attributes, though, have to be applied to both organizations. The difference in a corporation is very seldom do you really have much access to the board of directors. In the state government, it's critical. One of the major things that I had to do when I came on board was restore confidence in the agency with the legislature. And fortunately, I had some great help to do that with legislative affairs people that knew their way around and could get me introduced to the right people. But without doing that, we would not have been able to be successful in the job that we've done. So restoring confidence, restoring some of the funding that had been cut because of the legislature being unhappy with what was going on in DMS. So you have all these different dynamics, but dynamics happen in the corporate world and they happen in the government world. You just have to have a plan to work them through.
And you've always been a good politician.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you've been known for your ability to sell, and dramatically sell within your organization. And obviously, if you're making it in the state environment as well, you have the political side.
It's interesting. I've drawn the parallel between procurement and sales for years. And the interesting thing is, it was a fellow at Travelers that actually said this to me, Dick Perel. I looked at a colleague of mine one day that was really great at that relationship and selling and everything else. And I said to Dick that, I wish I was more like so-and-so. And he looked at me and he said, "You are. The difference is you just don't like doing it." And it was so true. So, I think all of us in our careers, we have things that we have to push ourselves to do that are inherent traits and capabilities, but they don't always come naturally. And how do you get out and do that sort of thing? And I think the sales side for me, when I have to turn it on to be successful, to bring the team to where we need to be, happy to do it, and I can do it well.
You can do it really well.
Thank you.
I've known a number of people who have worked for you over the years, and they've always applauded you, always.
Thank you.
So talent management, are you having struggles? Do you have struggles getting good talent into your organization these days?
It's huge, especially with the compensation levels that we pay in state government. Hiring a top-tier procurement person, we might have $50,000 or $60,000 to be able to do that. There's no bonus. There's state employees haven't gotten an increase in 5 years. Benefits are changing, so it's really a challenge. Here's the wonderful thing, though, about people that are committed to work in state government. They get it, they know it, and they have a passion for doing it. And when you look at the average wage in the state of Florida for a state employee, it's $35,000 a year. So when you look at that and you look at what we're able to accomplish, it's really great. But it's also forced me to focus so much more, I always did, but so much more on leadership. And how do you create an environment for people to be successful and provide them with the support that they need to get the job done? And what's been shocking to me in some respects is how little it really takes to motivate people to go out and get the job done. They want to do it. Everybody wakes up in the morning and they want to do a good job. Create the environment, give them the support, and it's not always money. They'd like it, but at the end of the day, you can do it a lot of different ways. And that's part of the magic of what I think we've put together down in Florida. That's wonderful. Well, I want to check in with you a couple years from now and see how it's going as well. Absolutely. In the meantime, absolutely. I'll see you at SIG. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We're out of time today, but folks, thank you for joining us for the Inside Source Executive Video Series. I'll see you next time.